Hey guys, I had a lot of fun making the last video, so I'm coming back for January, and we're just going to go through everything I watched this month. Starting off the list, we had The Fly, and look, this was a pretty interesting concept for the time, and I think that the practical effects are amazing, but overall, this movie just was not for me. The score was extremely predictable. I felt like every time a scene happened, you could basically say, oh yeah, this is the song they're gonna play, and then yeah, that song came on. There's a romance in this movie that kind of comes out of nowhere, and that makes sense since this was a pretty short movie. I think it was only about an hour and a half, but somehow it felt just a little bit too long. On top of that, the pacing just wasn't that great, and you really start to feel just how long this movie is by the end, even though it wasn't that long of a movie. Unfortunately, I ended up being kind of bored, and I'm gonna have to give this movie a 4 out of 10. Next thing I watched this month was Bullet Train, and let me just say, the trailers messed up any hype that could have been generated for this movie. I do not think they did a good job representing just how funny and how fun this movie was. I saw it pop up on Netflix, and I'm so glad that I watched it, because even though this is probably the stupidest movie that I've seen in a while, like this movie's dumb. I don't think anyone's gonna argue that. It's clear that they knew it was dumb. And for that reason, it was a super fun, super exciting watch, and there really wasn't a dull moment in the whole runtime. In comparison to The Fly, this movie was around 2.5 hours, and you did not feel that runtime at all. This movie just blows by. One criticism I saw a lot was that people weren't really enjoying the cameos that took place, but I don't agree with this. I thought the cameos were funny, I thought they added a little bit to the movie overall, and they were just cool to see. While most action scenes weren't incredible, I think that the last one is way more exciting and interesting than most of the action we see today. Once again, yeah, this is a dumb movie and you could probably nitpick it to death, but if you just shut your brain off and watch it, this is one of the most enjoyable movies of 2022. And for that reason, I'm gonna give it a 7 out of 10. Next movie I watched this month was John Wick 2, and let me just say, this movie is awesome. It takes everything that was great and exciting about the first movie and just builds on it and makes it so much better than you could expect. John Wick does not fuck around, and I think this movie highlights that more than any movie in the series. Every time one of his enemies talks about him, they go from hardened criminals to fearful schoolgirls, and it's just awesome to see. Basically, every action scene has you sitting in shock saying to yourself, holy shit, at least once. On top of that, this movie is able to find a nice balance between story and action, so you never really get bogged down by the sheer amount of fights that there are. I wouldn't say that John Wick is a perfect movie, but if you love action movies, there's really nothing you can complain about. So 8.5 out of 10. Can't wait to see John Wick 3. Next movie I watched was John Wick 3, and unfortunately, this movie is not as good as the second one. Yes, the action is still amazing, but that perfect balance I was talking about between story and action is not in this one. This whole movie is just a fight after fight after fight, and at some point you kind of get desensitized towards it. I will say that the first fight scene with the knives is the best one in the series, no question, but after that I really feel like there's just nothing new going on. You're just watching the same thing that you've kind of seen in the last two movies. I don't think this is a bad movie by any means, but it's just not what I was hoping for after watching the second one. My biggest request for John Wick 4 is that it incorporates story better so that there's a context for the fighting and you're not just watching John Wick line up headshots for 2 hours. Overall, I did enjoy this movie, but I'm going to have to give it a 6 out of 10. Next movie I watched this month is Spider-Man 2, and I plan on making a pretty big review for this one, just breaking down everything I love about it, but for now, I'm going to say it's probably the best superhero movie that's ever come out, and it's definitely one of my favorite movies of all time, and for that reason, 9 out of 10. Next movie I watched was It's a Wonderful Life. I've seen bits and pieces of this movie a lot, but I've never really watched it all the way through until now, and I feel like I've almost been avoiding it just because I've never been that big of a fan of Christmas movies, but I will say this one is definitely a cut above most of the movies you'll see that come out around Christmas. Aside from a couple little nitpicks like weird cuts and some instances of slower pacing, I think this is probably the definitive Christmas movie and it's really enjoyable to watch. I don't think there's many movies that can make me cry, but this was definitely one of them. I don't know, maybe I was just softened by the Christmas season, but I'm going to give this one an 8.5 out of 10. The next movie I watched this month was Avatar 2, The Way of the Water. And look, the special effects are amazing. This is one of the best instances of CGI we've ever seen. However, the story is not good. I feel like every time they want to build tension, one of the main character's kids just gets kidnapped. And the fact that I'm saying the main character is because I do not remember his name. Most of the people in this story are kind of forgettable, kind of bland. I watched this movie not even 2 weeks ago, and I've basically forgotten everything that happens in it. This movie is 3.5 hours long, and for the life of me, I cannot understand why that is the case. This should be a 2.5 hour movie at best, and it probably would have saved them a lot of money in CGI if they would have just made this shorter. This movie just did not click with me, and I do not think it's worth the hype. All that being said, I'm gonna give this movie a 5 out of 10. The final movie I watched this month was Elf, and in comparison to It's a Wonderful Life, this is definitely a worse movie, but it's still a Christmas classic, and I love it. I'm not sure why I waited until after the Christmas season happened to watch all these movies, but I'm still glad that I saw them. As far as comedies go, this isn't one of the best written by any means, but I still think it's hilarious.
I really can't stay. Baby, it's cold outside.
Get out! Don't look at me! Get out!
I would definitely say my favorite part of the movie is the ending, just because of how heartwarming it is and how well it ties everything together. The storybook aesthetic that they went with was really cool, and my only complaint about it was that there wasn't more scenes where the pages were flipped to show that we are watching a story. Overall, this is a fun movie. I love it. 7 out of 10. So yeah, that's what I watched this month. I really enjoyed everything that I saw for the most part. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I will see you back for February.